I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Barbara, you call the roll, please.
Counselor Pierce?
Here.
Counselor Ridgway?
Here.
Counselor Smart? Here. Counselor Warner?
Here.
Supervisor Rose?
Here. First order of business this evening is a public hearing to hear comments on ordinance amending sections of the zoning ordinance of the town of Volney. It's been on the town clerk's desk and available for the last week. It was noticed in the paper, so I'm not going to read the whole document, but I will open the floor now for any comments on it. Marie.
One of the changes is the changing it from 10 days to 5 days plus the public notice. Is that correct?
Okay, the heading, I'll read the headings of each. Oh, wait a minute. My headings just say use.
On the first page. Oh, you got one. Let me read it, Howard?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead. This is Bill's document that he put together, so I'll let Bill read it.
An ordinance further amending remaining sections that A, has fees for actions to be removed and placed in the town fee schedule. B, that states the town board not less than 10 days prior to the date of the public hearing to be changed to 5 days prior to the public hearing. This coincides with Town Law Act of July 1st, 1993. Section 8D variances replace number 4 with Town Law 267-B, number 2 through 3C to coincide with Town Law enacted July 1st, 1992. And under subdivision regulations for Town of Volney, the following change to sections that state from within 45 days after the date of the public hearing to 62 days from the close of the public hearing. The Town Law 276, July 1st, 1993. These are amendments that are done by the state to the state regulations and trying to conform more to the state rules and I only have one reviewing process instead of going by a number of different regulations. Even though we have zoning here, there's still a lot of zoning that people have to follow through the state laws. And this only furthers that we stay with the state and you only have one set of rules to follow.
I would just like to say, I'm the zoning board, and I know how difficult it is sometimes to get a 10-day notice, and I just think a lot of times that's just too long, and I support the 5-day notice. And you're saying you're changing it from 66 days to 45 days, or 62 days?
45 to 62 days.
Okay.
The state changed it to 62, because now we're at 239 L&M, requiring to go before the county planning board. Lots of times 42 days, 45 days wasn't enough to get the application to the county and back again before the 45 days were up. So the state changed it to 62 days.
I think the county has also adopted the 5-day notice as well, so thank you.
Any other comments? Dominic?
Okay.
State your name, please.
Kingdom Road. On this notice that Marie was just saying, are you going to, or how are you going to guarantee that the people are notified within 5 days rather than 10?
We have to notice it in the paper, as we always have. Only we'll do it in 5 days instead of 10.
How can you know? What I want to say is that a lot of people do not receive the Valley News. Is there another way of getting to these people?
None that I know of. If you can suggest one, we'd be receptive to it.
Well, I suggested this before, and that is a registered letter to the area, or the people in the immediate area.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was in the hospital at the time that they had a proposed hearing. And because I couldn't get here, I didn't even know anything about it. Now, if I would have received a registered letter because of what was going on in my area, then I would have, I wouldn't have any excuses. So therefore, instead of the paper, I mean, you can use the paper, go ahead. But I think the people in the immediate area encompassing, let's say, a quarter of a mile of that proposed area that they want to change or whatever's coming up. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about a local regulation. The state don't require that. All we're talking about is what the state requires us to do. And they changed theirs from 10 days to 5 days. It has nothing to
Do
do
we
with...
have to follow what the state says?
No, we don't. The minimum requirement is that we notice it in the paper, but we have done other measures. We've posted signs in the neighborhood. We have a sign now that we put out, which is something we started doing about 3 or 4 years ago. And I brought up the very same thing that you're raising tonight about sending letters out. I think that's a good idea. How far along we should send them and how we're going to go about it is another thing that we have to address, and we haven't done that yet. But I do think that's a good idea because...
Let me just cite one thing. The city of Oswego is 200 feet surrounding the proposed area. Okay, all the people within 200 feet because of their small lot area. Then we can go to a comparable distance, like 5 lots, 6 lots from the proposed change or whatever. I mean, we've got to come up with something because people like me are going to come back at you. Because, you know, do we get the Valley News? No.
Right, and that's why we put the sign on the property. We thought that at least would help those that don't get a paper or miss it in the paper. They'll see the
But,
sign
you know,
in their neighborhood and they'll question that.
But to eliminate all problems, I would say, let's go with a registered letter or a certified letter
Mm-hmm.
to the people in the immediate area, like 4, 5, 6 lots, either side of it. And I don't think that's asking too much.
No, I don't either. I think we'll...
If you look at your regulations, local regulations, I believe in your subdivision regulations, we're supposed to do that, where it's a cost to the applicant, whoever's applying for a public hearing or something like that, he has to pay for the letter and all that to go out. This is just another added cost to the people applying for a permit. It's not, the town don't pay for it, it's the applicant would have to pay for it.
Well, let the town do it and charge the applicant. It's part of your fee.
People don't want to follow the regulations now because of all the fees. Now, you try to keep them, you try your best to keep them low. But if you want to put them on, in our zoning, it states that, but we haven't been doing it. We tried other measures like Howard said, with a sign, that notifies people, that drive by. I believe that we only have to notify people within 100 feet of both sides of the property that has a thing on the agenda for that night. But it's hard to get people to follow regulations anyway, because of the cost factor. Would you want us to go ahead and say, start doing what we're supposed to do and start charging another fee to these people to
You don't have to, just include it in there.
Okay. It'll be discussed at our next zoning update meeting, Dominic. Okay?
Can I just make a comment on that? Basically, the way the zoning board has handled that, if it's a large variance, let's say somebody wants to do some mining in the area, or something that's really going to have an environmental impact on the neighborhood, we have requested the applicant to send certified letters at their expense to the people, especially for a business. But for the average person that just wants an area variance for a garage, you know, that's coming in, they're already paying $65 for a hearing, and if you are now going to impose on that person to send registered letters to 15, 20 neighbors to say he just wants an area variance, I think that's a pretty steep stringent that you're going to put on the taxpayer. I think the fact that, you know, if it's a business and they're going to have a major impact, that's one thing, and we do request that as a zoning board, but to demand us to request everyone that comes before us to start sending certified letters to every applicant in the neighborhood for every little variance, I think that's a little ridiculous. We go through a lot of different variances throughout the year, and I just think that's an awful unnecessary expense.
Okay. Any other questions on this public hearing? Comments?
Dominic, wasn't the thing in particular that you were talking about a subdivision?
Yeah, the subdivision that went just south of me, the subdivision that went north of me.
Yeah, that's one thing that we could look into. There's a difference between minor variances or major subdivisions. They're totally different types of action.
I mean, you know,
If you're building a garage and you want to vary it to 10 feet or 15 feet, the only thing you have to do is probably get your, okay, hypothetically, your south neighbor and your north neighbor. You send the 2 letters, or maybe the one across the street. But if you've got a project going on, a subdivision, like that hit me, then I think it should encompass the whole area, because it's going to affect the whole area, as it has. But, you know, that's why I want you people to consider it. I know what Maria's saying.
Yes, but
I
this,
have no problem with that. Why? When it affects, you know, probably 4, 5, 6, 7 people, I mean,
what we're addressing here has nothing to do with a subdivision, what Dominic is talking about.
No.
That has to be, we have to address that also.
Right. We will be discussing it though, Dominic. Any other comments on this public hearing? Okay. Then I'll move to close this public hearing.
I second it.
Barbie, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Mr. Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rhodes?
Aye. Okay, let the record show, Barb, that the same board members are in attendance at our regular meeting. First order of business is approval of the minutes. Resolution 95-93, move that the regular town board minutes of July 13th, 1995, having been distributed, be approved without reading. I'll move it.
I second it.
Any additions or corrections by the board? Okay. Barbie, poll the council.
Aye.
Mr. Ridgway?
Aye.
Mr. Smart?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rhodes?
Aye. Okay, next order of business was transfer of funds, resolution 95-94. The first item is something we discussed at the work session the other night, and the comments made were that we were transferring too much money. So we whittled it down and figured out what needed to be there for certain equipment. And so we've modified that and changed those numbers. And if the board's in agreement with this, the resolution reads from A8015.4 Code Enforcement Contractual, $1,000. A1990.4 Special Items Contingent. A1990.4 Special Items Contingent, $625.02. A1990.4 Special Items Contingent, $701, for a total of $2,412.53. 2, A8015.2 Code Enforcement Equipment, $1,000. A9050.8 Employees Benefit Unemployment Insurance, $780.50. T22 Federal Income Tax, $157.66. T37 Parkland, $467.36. A9050.8 Employees Benefits Unemployment, $701, for a total of $2,412.53. I'll move it.
I'll second it for discussion.
Mm-hmm.
There's, all of the items listed here I am in favor of except T37. I'll tell you what my problem is. This deals with the parkland, and it deals with expenditures above and beyond the bonding that's already been done, I believe. And my concern is that I voted against the bonding for the park. I can't in good conscience vote for this fund. Now, I want to vote for the rest of them, but with that in there, I'm going to have to vote no. Is there a way that we can divide these?
Sure, just vote for everything but that
I'll
one.
vote for everything but that one, and that would, okay, then
Yeah.
that's clarification I need.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from the board?
What those expenses for the parkland are legal and other transfer expenses necessary to purchase it. We bonded for the exact price of the land. We didn't bond for the price of our lawyer to do the transfers.
Okay. Barbie, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
I, with the exception of T37 Parkland for $467.36.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rhodes?
Aye. Okay, Resolution 95-95, payment of bills. Move that vouchers 215 through 241, General Fund, in the amount of $15,316.32, and vouchers 184 through 205, Highway Fund, in the amount of $59,846.03, having been approved, that the supervisor is authorized to pay them from designated accounts. Would someone like to move that?
So moved.
Second.
Barb, you poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Okay, on to communications. The first communication I have, I actually don't have in my hands. We couldn't locate it today, but we have it around here somewhere. And it has to do with a grant that our town clerk, Barb McEwen, worked very hard to secure and was awarded. And the grant was in the amount of $10,432 to upgrade the records here in the town. And I just want to applaud Barb for the work that she did above and beyond the call of duty, because that's not part of her job to write grants, but she took that upon herself to do it and was successful at it. And it was a very nice letter from the state commending her on the well-written grant and how, you know, great it was for the town and so on. And I wish I had it to read tonight, but I don't. But in lieu of that, I'd like to thank Barb for her efforts and congratulations. The other letter we received is from the New York State DOT. You have a copy of it here. Okay, I'm going to read it because I didn't know Jesse had a copy here. Dear Mr. Rose, on behalf of the State Archives and Records Administration, Sarah, I am pleased to inform you that the Commissioner of Education is offering a local government records management improvement fund grant in the amount of $10,432 to the town of Volney for an inventory and planning project. This year's review process was particularly competitive, as 615 local governments requested $19.5 million and only $7 million was available in funds. The grant awarded to the town of Volney is one of 390 awarded to local governments across the state of New York. Payment of grant funds was authorized in 1995-96 state budget, which was recently adopted by the legislature. Before payments can be made, however, the Division of Budget must approve the 1995-96 expenditure plan. Sarah will notify the project director in writing as soon as this plan has been approved. The grant reviewers found this to be a well-thought-out and well-written application. They recommended additional funding for record storage boxes to reflect the current state contract price of $1.29 a box. As a condition of this grant, the project director must be conducting a records inventory workshop sponsored by Sarah during the grant year. The dates and locations of these workshops are listed in the workshop catalog. Each application was evaluated in writing by a panel of 3 independent experts in records management, archival administration or information technology, and a member of the local government records advisory council. Panels then met in Albany to discuss the merits of the applications, taking into account reviewers' written evaluations. The panel's funding recommendations were then considered by LGRAC, which forwarded them to the Commissioner of Education for final review and approval. If you accept this grant offer, including the changes and recommendations indicated above, please complete the enclosed acceptance form. That's basically it, but I thought it was very nice, and again, thank you for your efforts, Barb. Yeah, I got 2 or 3 of those, yeah. The other correspondence we received was a notice of order from the State Department of Transportation approving the speed limit request change on Kingdom Road to 45 miles an hour between County Route 57 and 0.8 plus or minus miles north of March Road, a distance of 2 plus or minus miles. So that has been granted. Dominic, you'll be happy to learn. Just a second. I believe he has moved some of the signs down to indicate where that begins, but we still need other signs there that are on order. So before too long, we'll have the whole road posted properly. Do you have a quick question on this?
Yes. Again, I'll address myself, Dominic Clavelli of Kingdom Road.
This isn't public comment, Dominic.
No, this is to you, okay? I talked to Ray McDougal this morning concerning this, because I just received it. And I wanted a clarification on it, and he stated just as I had put in the petition, that the people of Kingdom Road were asking for from 57 to 45. Apparently, there's been something gone astray here, because the area that he has left out, which is north of my place, contains between 16 and 20 kids. And as I told you, and I told the board, and I've told Art Ausbelt, and I told Ray McDougal the same thing. I'm concerned about the kids. I don't care about me.
Okay, Dominic, we did our part. We requested, this
Okay.
is what the state came back
Now,
with.
per Mr. McDougal, had probably 12 hours ago, he stated that we, and I've already submitted the petition stating what areas I wanted, or we wanted, inclusive from 45 to 57. And he said, well, something went wrong. So I'm asking you to submit another letter for clarification on this so that we can get that area down there from the beginning of 45, which is 3/10 of a mile, I guess, and there's 16 to 20 kids in that area.
Okay, Mr. McDougal's with the DOT, I take it?
Yes.
You have his number?
I can give you, phone number is 428-3241.
Okay,
Okay?
I'll check with him.
And like I said, there's 46 kids, I think, when I brought the petition, that ride the school buses. And there's 3 sets of school buses that come up there. One is OCO, one is A&E, one is a Shriggle School District, I'm sorry, there's 4. Shriggle School District, Fulton School District, ACO, and A&E.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Okay?
I'll find out.
I mean, you know, I'm glad that they reduced it. Or
Okay.
brought it down to a sensible speed limit. but
Okay, we'll find out
they
why.
didn't do that far end.
Okay, very good. Another letter I just received today, and this is something that's been ongoing for quite a while, and I think any of you in the following meetings over the years probably remember this one from the past. Volney Town Board, the Clemens family would appreciate a decision by the town about the ownership of the road formerly known as Main Ave, now listed as Clemens Drive. Past owner Rutland Realty went bankrupt in the late 40s. The town has no interest in this road to own or maintain it. We have maintained it for 40 years and extended it ourselves. We would like to tar and stone it, but hesitate to invest more time and money without a clear title of ownership. 2 other such roads in our area have structures on them. One has a mobile home on it, which is across the Gillespie Road from Main Ave, Clemens Drive, and the other is a garage built at the end of Georgia Ave. Did the town give these people these roads? Are these 2 people paying taxes on property they don't even own? Someone needs to make clear this up. Too much time has gone by already. He's absolutely right, and I don't know what else we can do about it. We've talked to the county about this. We've passed it along to our attorney, and we'll do the same again. But if anyone knows where that property is, it is kind of an odd situation over there. So the board is well aware of this one, I think, too. I'll make a copy for everyone if you'd like. Okay, that's all I have on communication. Committee reports, Planning Board, Kevin.
The most recent meeting of the Planning Board was held on Wednesday, August 2nd. At this meeting, the board conducted the following business. We approved the subdivision application made by Mr. Thomas Canteen for the purpose of selling a parcel of land so that an existing cemetery on County Route 45 could be expanded. We also approved the subdivision application made by a Mrs. Marlene Thorpe for the purpose of deeding property to her children. During this meeting, the board was served papers as part of an Article 78 proceeding challenging the board's decision on the proposed Baldwin Heights subdivision. The good part was we weren't challenged on any procedural grounds. Everything we did procedurally, I guess, was okay. But on whether or not enough evidence existed to justify the conclusions that we made. I think if anybody drove out there and visited the property, I think they could probably see some of the reasoning behind our conclusions. This is the first time the board has faced litigation since the Cellular One matter almost 3 years ago. And considering the amount of business that we've been handling in the last couple of years, I think we've done quite well. As part of this matter, the board passed a resolution requesting that Mr. Dennis Hawthorne Jr. represent us in this matter, and I held an initial meeting with him yesterday, August 9th, and hopefully we can get this matter cleared up very quickly. The next meeting of the planning board will be held on Wednesday, August 16th. That's next Wednesday. I published this in the paper twice. We'll be holding 2 public hearings at that meeting, and this meeting is intended to replace our regular September meeting. So anybody who was planning on seeing us in September, contact me. I'm in the phone book, and we'll get you on the agenda for this meeting. We had to hold this meeting in order to try to work with a couple of these pending outstanding applications before us. As I said earlier, there are 2 public hearings scheduled for that night. One is regarding a request by Ron and Chris Austin to open a small restaurant on property they own on the McDougal Road. And the second hearing will concern a request by Niagara Mohawk to erect a media information center on property located on Route 176. This is on the southern corner of the county airport property. As I said, a regular meeting of the planning board will follow the 2 public hearings. And again, if anybody has any questions or needs to come before us, or has any business or planning any business before us, I encourage them to contact me. I'd also like to just mention, I don't know, this might be something Cindy's mentioning, we've done very well with those public notice signs, and I believe we're going to get some more of them made. They've lasted about 3 years, and we're going to tighten them down a little bit. I think we've discussed it, and we're going to shorten the amount of words, and it's basically going to just say, public hearing, come down to the town hall with any questions. But I do think that they are a good step, and they've worked fairly well. I know if we've had some important issues, they seem to have helped get the word out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kevin, is there a reason why you're not having a meeting in September?
Well, we've been having, the reason being is that for about the last 3 months, we've been holding 2 meetings a month. And I'm a little worried about where our contractuals stand. So what I was thinking, since we had to have a meeting towards the latter part of August anyway, if we can do it, if that can replace the September meeting, I'll go with it. If we do have some very important business to take care of, I won't hesitate to hold a meeting in September. But the idea is we've had numerous meetings this year. It's been a very busy year. We've had a lot of business going on. It looks like there is a little break in the action right now. And again, I'm a little, I want to try to keep our budget under control. And, but if there is something important coming up, we will hold a meeting. Thank you.
See something?
Sure.
On the other night, the work session, you brought the aspect of Mr. Girardi from the River Glen Mall had the state cut down the trees along the state right-of-way. When the plan board was doing its job, they requested with Mr. Girardi, and he agreed at the time of the site plan approval to leave that buffer of trees located where it is. Mr. Girardi's concern is that people can't see the shopping center. If you're driving down 481, if you can't see that shopping center, I hope I'm going south while you're going north. But in regards to, we have to write a letter to the state. I wonder if you'd let Kevin send a letter from the site plan approval that Mr. Girardi agreed to leave them trees there. Now he wants them down.
I don't know that they requested a letter, Barb. They didn't request a letter on that. They just wanted verbal.
I called him yesterday and I told him the board's decision was no, and he said good. He didn't want to take them down anyway because,
That was the landscape engineer for the DOT. Right?
Yeah.
I can see if the state has some dead trees on the right-of-way, take care of it.
And stuff like that, fine, but some of those trees are
Well, in
hard
your
maples,
conversation
some
with
are
Mr. Girardi, you may
real
want to
good
mention
trees.
that was part of the agreement with site plan approval, that those trees remain.
Well, Bill called me up, and I did reassure him. I remember that those trees were supposed to be left there. If you're going south on 481, the trees don't make any difference at all. And if you're heading north on 481, you're supposed to be slowing down anyway. So I really don't see where there's a big problem with that at all. And a lot of trees were taken down when the site was cleared in the first place. So I know that that was one area we did ask them to try to keep as many trees as possible standing. Thank you.
Okay. Zoning Board, Marie?
And we had a meeting last night, and originally we had a public hearing scheduled for Mr. Sirour, located on the Dietrich Road. However, he contacted Cindy and asked to be taken off the agenda. Apparently, he's not going to put a trailer down there now, and he's just going to go into the house, so that was canceled. We also had two applicants come before us last night. One was Eddie Ballinger. He wants to, he requests a public hearing for a use variance because he wants to put a mini storage building on his property, and it's in back of the property that he has now, the building he's got now. You can either access it off in 57 or Calkins Road, but you won't even see it from either road. It will be hidden behind the other. But I think that he told me there was about 40 units that he was hoping to put in there. This is a residential area, so therefore this is a non-conforming use, and we will be holding a public hearing for Eddie next month at September 13th at 7 o'clock. We also had a representative from VIP Structures for Owens, Illinois. He also requested a public hearing for an area variance to expand a commercial building located on Great Bear Road. Apparently, our bulk density only allows for 35% of area coverage, and he is requesting 42% coverage, which is a 17% increase. So we told him that we would honor his request and hold a public hearing for this expansion. This is an industrial zone. It is an allowed use. And apparently Owens, Illinois is doing very well. The business is apparently really building up, and what they need is more storage space, and so they do need an expansion to the building. And seeing as it is an industrial area, that's a good sign. So he will be there next month. So if anyone would like to come and comment on either one of these, we will be there next month, September 13th at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Now, you said mini storage, Trey, but you're talking about the type where people come and store stuff and they come in and out?
I don't know if you've been down to Mimi's, right in back of Mimi's, those little mini storage buildings. It's the same type of facility that's there, and it will go in back of the garage that he has now. But the way it's located, it will be directly in back of the garage, but you won't see it from either road.
Okay.
And there is ample area, and so basically if he can comply with the use variance regulations.
Okay. Code enforcement, Cindy?
In July, I issued 21 permits, 2 for mobile homes, 2 additions, 4 accessory buildings, 1 garage, 1 septic, 5 pools, 4 decks, 1 commercial, and 1 miscellaneous. Total fees collected are $1,695.08. The commercial permit is for the Fulton Savings Bank. I believe they're expecting to start construction sometime later this month. They had the job out to bid. I issued 1 certificate of occupancy. We did 12 construction inspections, 8 fire safety inspections, and 4 complaint follow-ups. Things have been very busy so far in August, which is what I found last year too. July was a little quiet, and August hit, and everybody decided fall's coming quick. We've got to get everything done. I would like to remind people that if they are replacing a mobile home with another mobile home on their property, they are required to get a building permit. We've had a couple of problems with people who didn't understand that replacing a mobile home did require a permit for the new structure. So if anybody is intending on doing that kind of work, you do need to get a building permit. And like Kevin said, we've been very busy. Niagara Mohawk's getting ready to build something, Owens, Illinois. So we've got quite a few big commercial things that are happening too. Thank you.
Thank you. Recreation, I have a report from Susan. She works evenings. 51 children attended the Sylvan Beach trip, as well as 7 adults. Upcoming events include Saturday, August 19th, 7 p.m., Volney night at the Fulton Speedway. Race begins at 7 p.m. Please meet at the front gate at 6:15 p.m. Free admission. Friday, August 25th, Syracuse Chiefs baseball game. The game starts at 7 p.m. The bus leaves the town hall at 5:45 and returns at 10 p.m. Dog control, Jerry. Sure.
The park over there, we got the grass all planted and everything. I spent about a week and a half trying to find a volunteer to cut the grass over there for us, and Chuck McEwen went over and many bush hog and he cleaned it off for us. Now the time comes that people can play on it, softball on it, soccer on it. You got the volleyball courts open over there, but we need some kind of a maintenance, somebody to cut the grass over there. Under the present situation, we probably have to hire somebody because we just can't get volunteers this day and age. And if we can find somebody to pay people, it'd be nice to come up with that, because that grass is gonna be, need to be cut before long.
Well, if you remember, Bill, during the budget process last fall, I asked Bob Kerfing about the possibility of the highway department taking care of that for us once we got things off the ground over there. And I also told him that if he wasn't interested in doing it, we could easily make his department a Department of Public Works and make that department take care of it. He said, no, that wouldn't be necessary. He would take care of it. He'd do what he could do. Well, as you know, he has done absolutely nothing over there this year. I mentioned this at our last town board meeting. I'm very dissatisfied with Mr. Kerfing because he told us he would take care of it. He asked us to put a fence in along the property line there because he said that was the reason he wouldn't get in there until that fence was up. We did that in the month of May or first part of June. It is now almost mid-August and we haven't seen anything yet. So hence, nothing has really happened at the park because we don't have the road completed properly, we don't have the parking installed properly, and we can't do anything without his help. So that's where it stands right now. I've asked him, maybe you can have better luck with him than I.
Anytime we get a park going, any community right now, I think it's the town of Broome, if you read the papers, they had the same political problem right there in their community right now. The highway department used to take care of the town park, now there's been a political scrabble over there, now it's going back on town board to take care of the park. So whether it's Mr. Kerfing or any highway superintendent, that can happen. That's not my concern right now. My concern right now is we got a park that we put a lot of money in, the drainage was good, we had tractor trailer over there fully loaded, they drove over all that ground, and we got the grass planted, it's cut once, and we need to pay somebody to cut the grass. Either that or buy a lawnmower so that we can do it, one or the other. You can argue with the highway department as much as you want, but the more you argue, nothing's gonna happen.
I'm not arguing with anybody, I just asked, and if you have some suggestion where we can get money to pay someone, I'd be receptive to that, but I don't.
Some way we can get some money.
Well,
You know.
not until next year if you want to raise taxes, which I don't want to do, so I don't know what else we can do. You know, we relied on volunteers. The other option is to make it a Department of Public Works and require that be done. That's something the board's going to have to consider if we don't get anything else done. That's how the cemeteries are taken care of through the highway department, and they agreed to do that. Okay. Okay, dog control.
61 complaints of dogs received, adopted out 4 dogs. 3 dogs I adopted during the rabies clinic, or through connections through the rabies clinic, so that worked out real good. 0 dogs were redeemed. No dogs were put down. In total this month at the kennel we had 5 dogs. I got 1 dog at the kennel right now. 5 dogs, actually 6 dogs. I had another reported loss tonight, so 6 dogs reported loss. 370 miles traveled with the truck. The highway come over and cut down 5 dead trees that has been dead, and every time the wind blows it fills the driveway up. So they cut the trees down, cleaned it up pretty good. The lawns are mowed, the yard's been trimmed. And for the repair is, we got an estimate for the floor to be stripped and painted at the walls. We got a sand pressure washer against the walls and floors to get the old epoxy paint off. So that was brought up, I guess, last week.
Thank you, Jim.
Historian Burns?
Well, there's been nothing drastic happening in the historian's office. The usual things, collecting, sorting, and filing. Cross-referencing family files has been very interesting and rewarding when people are researching the roots and the answers right at your fingertips. I'm still working on lists of veterans of all the wars and any articles I can find pertaining to either the wars or the veterans. The other project I'd like to finish is a complete list of all the town of Volney officials from the beginning to date. I have most of them and will decide how to display them.
Thank you. Highway, do you have a report, Barb?
1 day signs, 12 days road work, 1 day road driveways, 10 days machine repair, 6 days mowing roadsides, 8 days cutting trees. The wages for July 1995, $19,048.68. Materials, maintenance, and supplies, $59,845.97. The total expenditures, $78,894.65, and that's submitted by Bob Kerfing, Highway Superintendent.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, next order of business is old business. Does anyone on the board have any old business?
Yeah, I'd like to just publicly thank Chet McEwen for cutting the grass over in the park for us. The other volunteers I've managed to get, I've had one person from Massachusetts that comes down, helps on the weekend over there. I got a couple kids from Hannibal that comes over to help me. I got a couple kids from Fulton help me over at the park. We're making a park for the town of Volney. Now I have to go out of state, I have to go out of the township to get volunteers to help with the park. You know, and here in the past, this park has been a big thing. Now that we got the physical work to do, you can't get nobody to help.
I understand your frustration, Bill.
I'd just like to see it moved, and we ought to be able to find some money to do it.
Yeah.
To us this year.
I certainly share the same sentiments, and I thank you too, Chet. That was very nice of you to take a day to do something like that. We appreciate it. Any other old business? Okay, we'll move on to resolutions and discussion. First resolution is 95-96, an ordinance amending sections of the zoning ordinance of the town of Volney. Be it ordained and enacted by the town board of the town of Volney, county of Oswego, state of New York as follows. A, section 8D, variances. Replace number 4 with town law 267B, number 2 through 3C, shall be amended and updated, which states in its entirety as follows. Use variance. 2, use variance. A, the Board of Appeals, on appeal from the decision or determination of the administrative official charged with the enforcement of such ordinance or local law, shall have the power to grant use variances authorizing a use of the land which otherwise would not be allowed or would be prohibited by the terms of the ordinance of local law. B, no such use variance shall be granted by a Board of Appeals without a showing by the applicant that applicable zoning regulations and restrictions have caused unnecessary hardship. In order to prove such unnecessary hardship, the applicant shall demonstrate to the Board of Appeals that 1, under applicable zoning regulations, the applicant is deprived of all economic use or benefit from the property in question, which deprivation must be established by competent financial evidence. 2, that the alleged hardship relating to the property in question is unique and does not apply to a substantial portion of the district or neighborhood. 3, that the requested use variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And 4, that the alleged hardship has not been self-created. C, the Board of Appeals in granting of use variances shall grant the minimum variance that it shall deem necessary and adequate to address the unnecessary hardship proven by the applicant, and at the same time preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and the health, safety, and welfare of the community. 3, area variances. A, the Zoning Board of Appeals shall have the power upon an appeal from a decision or determination of an administrative official charged with the enforcement of such ordinance of local law to grant area variances from the area or dimensional requirements of such ordinance or local law. B, in making its determination, the Zoning Board of Appeals shall take into consideration the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted, as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant. In making such a determination, the board shall also consider 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. 2, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the Board of Appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. C, the Board of Appeals in granting of the area variances shall grant the minimum variance that it shall deem necessary and adequate, and at the same time preserve and protect the character of the neighborhood and the health, safety, and welfare of the community. B, this ordinance shall take effect 10 days after publication and posting of a notice setting forth and the title and brief description thereof, or immediately as provided by Section 133 of the town law. Any questions or comments from the board?
You move it, Mike? Are you moving it?
Are we
okay.
going to vote on these
I'm
tonight?
sorry.
I didn't know we were.
That's what the resolution is.
I understand.
Joe's presenting them as a resolution tonight to vote on.
The only, I have a real concern, I've voiced this before, regarding the use variances, and I know that this is probably state boilerplate, is that right, Bill?
Yeah.
Pretty much. But basically, if I read this correctly, I don't see how a variance can ever be granted by the Board of Appeals if you have to meet all of the criteria listed here. I don't understand how that anyone can say that they're deprived of all economic benefit of a property. The minute you put that in there, I don't see how it can work. Am I reading that correctly, Marie? Then there is no way that...
That's my concern with the use variance, and I do realize that's state reg, but what it says is, if you're gonna make a profit, you can't do it. You know, you have to be economically deprived, and, I mean, it's almost impossible to grant a use variance based on that criteria. I don't know what you could do to amend that, because I do think that is state reg. But it's very frustrating for applicants that have come to us.
I don't think it says if you're going to make a profit, you can't do it. That's not what it says at all.
You have to prove to the zoning board that you can't use that property for anything else, that you will be, you know, it's a financial hardship. You have to prove to us, you know, that it's a financial hardship if we don't grant you this variance.
And it says all economic use or benefit in question must be established by competent financial evidence. It's impossible. That automatically, from my point of view, reading this, if you follow it to a letter, eliminates it.
Let me state, Jim, that when you go to planning and zoning school, this is what you learn in the school, the state regulations. It's a strict part that we follow. Our people go to the state school on this, they learn this at the state school, and they come back, they look at our zoning, and they gotta go get this record, this description out, and they use it as a reference anyway. It's in zoning now, but you gotta keep going back and forth. This puts it all back in one if you read our zoning. You were at the zoning update meeting when we went through this.
Well, I understand that, Bill, and I was there, and I think I voiced the same question and the same concern, and I voiced it every time that I've seen this thing. And my concern is, we basically tie the hands of our zoning board of appeals by doing this. I understand it's a state regulation, but I'm not sure if it's ever been tried in court. And I'd rather leave it alone and not have that particular paragraph in there.
I don't really see how you're really changing it, you know.
But we're not.
You're not changing all you're doing is adopting what's there. You're not really
Right,
changing
because, the only thing you can do as a municipality is to make a law stricter. You cannot override the state or federal government and make a rule more lenient. All we're doing is making it exactly what the state rule is, so there's no way that someone can find some possible way of putting the state regulations and ours together and making it worse than it was. This way, it's just there's one standard. And also from going to a lot of these seminars on planning and zoning, what a lot of the lawyers there say is that people look at this the wrong way. It doesn't mean that you have to prove 1, 2, 3, and 4 100% that there is no problem at all in that area. The thing is, those are the 4 areas you consider, and after you consider those 4 areas, if your conclusion is, in general, it's not bad for the community to do it, even though it's not 100% in each category, it's all right as long as the overall thing is good. And that is the biggest misconception, is you have to totally 100% meet each one of those.
Well,
Claudia, that's exactly what happened in a meeting last night when someone did come to us and ask us for a use variance. Again, it's an interpretation. If you're on the zoning board and the zoning says, you know, under no circumstances can you grant a use variance based on this, if you're on that board, you're going to read it that way. And we're saying, wait a minute, let's look at the whole picture here. And I, too, have been to the school, the zoning update, and I've heard the lawyers say it's almost impossible to give a use variance. Most people cannot. And you really have to list the criteria of why you're granting it. But whether it's been challenged in court or not, I, too, do not know that, Jim. And that would be really a good question to find out what has happened with the use variance.
Cindy?
As the code enforcement officer, the person that has to enforce the zoning, this is always a difficult issue for me. And I think what's more important than the use variance and being concerned about what it says, as Claudia said, it is a state reg and we need to abide by it. We can't make it less restrictive. What we really need to be doing is looking at our zoning ordinance and being realistic and telling our community what we really want. We have a lot of non-conforming businesses in our community. We have a lot of businesses in residential zones. Writing the zoning for the town of Volney was a very difficult task. We decided somebody somewhere along the line came up with these lines that seemed reasonable. However, we find that people want to operate businesses in agricultural zones or in residential zones, and our zoning says no, it's not allowed. In many cases, they were granted permits without a variance. In other cases, a variance was issued despite what the state law said. It was issued anyway because they felt it was reasonable. They looked at it. They looked at what the people in the neighborhood thought. They looked at what was there. My biggest concern is that I feel like we have created an illusion that we have a zoning ordinance that we truly enforce. And I don't think our zoning ordinance reflects what we really want. I think many of our non-conforming businesses are businesses we do not wish to get rid of. We don't mind if they expand. A couple of years ago, a recreational business was put into our zoning, allowed in any zone with site plan approval and special use permit. That's a very, very lenient section of our zoning. What we really seem to want most of the time is a fairly lenient zoning ordinance. And as the code enforcement officer, I would really like to see our zoning update committee get some work done on what's going on with this ordinance, because we are not enforcing it. Our zoning board of appeals is very often not upholding it because they don't think it's reasonable. And the only way to solve it is to change our zoning ordinance, the legal way to change it, and what would really be proper. And then the people of Volney know where we stand, okay? Our zoning ordinance says if you have a non-conforming business, we'll consider allowing it. We won't say absolutely, no, it's not allowed, you have to have a use variance. We'll say you have to have site plan approval, you have to have a special use permit, but we'll show a way you can get it. And then our ZBA can look at it and use those kind of criteria, sensible criteria. Does it make sense? Instead of having a zoning ordinance which we try to enforce, but we can't because it isn't really what we want. And that's where I would really like to see the town board take some action.
Well, I disagree with that comment. The zoning board is not enforcing the ordinance. I think we are enforcing the ordinance, and I take exception with that comment, Cindy, because what we are doing is when people come to us, that's the whole purpose of an appeal board. You do look at the situation, and yes, there is non-conforming use. And if the neighbors in the neighborhood come and say, we don't think it's a problem, we don't mind that it's there, then, and if we can make reasonable suggestions that it can help the applicant and neighbors don't care, then I do think that is good use of the zoning board.
But
And I think
still,
that's the whole purpose of it.
Is it going against the way our zoning is written?
Based on our interpretation,
Yes.
I think not. If we look at something and somebody presents something to us, you might disagree with our decision, but based on the criteria of what we've heard discussed at meetings, and I know there's a commercial building that's in question right now that people are concerned about, but at that meeting, people presented the criteria, and he complied with everything that we had asked him to do. So and the neighbors who were there did not object to it, so then what was the problem? That's what the whole purpose of a zoning board is to listen to the pros and cons and make a decision. And I don't think it was going against the zoning at all.
There is a thing called precedent, though, Marie, and when you set a precedent in one neighborhood, you pretty much set it for the whole town. You got to consider those things when you do that type of thing.
Not the zoning.
That's why you go to an individual case. Just like you go to a court for an individual case, they base the criteria on that individual case.
When I've gone to these seminars, they said, well, what do you do if you go from having a code enforcement officer who likes to sit in the office, doesn't like to drive around town, so anybody who comes before him, he'll write a permit for it because it's easier than going and looking at it. And you go through 10 years of that, then all of a sudden you get somebody that's looking at the property and deciding it's not a good idea. Is there a problem with all of a sudden starting to enforce it? And what they've said is no. There isn't a problem. It's just, if mistakes were made, oh well, that's life. It's just, you're supposed to be consistent. Now, if the two people came in on the same day and you told Jim he could do it and John he couldn't, then you've got a problem. But if 5 years ago Jim could do it and today John can't, that's a different thing.
I just like to say that during my tenure here, that everybody says our zoning's not clear. All this does is this puts it in more in black and white, what everybody's been asking for. Even in our zoning, it says that in no case shall a variance be granted solely for the reason of additional financial gain on the part of the owner of the land or building involved.
But
So
that's
once
lot.
you've done something with that land, you can't do anything to get additional financial gain on it anyway. And our people in our town on our side can't understand that statement. So here we went with the state regs, with it spells it out in black and white, and I don't know how much more specific you can get in black and white than what the state has on it.
Bill, that
You know?
language that you just gave is a lot less restrictive than this and gives you more flexibility from my point of view. And the point is, the language that you used, Bill, regarding the financial gain is, I feel, reasonable. But the way we've got it here, I would think, regardless of what you say, Claudia, the language speaks for itself.
Whatever it is, the most rigid one overrules, and that's why they use both copies when they're doing their discussion at the meetings. They go by both books. This way here, we get all one interpretation in one book, where the members of the ZBA or whoever has to go through it only has to look at the one book.
And what I'm going by, Jim, is what foremost experts, lawyers in zoning and planning in New York State are saying is the way to interpret it. I'm not a lawyer.
I
But
understand, and I
this
bet you
is
8 to 5
what
I can get you
they-
3 lawyers that say the exact opposite.
Well, lots of times that's the way they do it.
I
They'll have-
understand that.
They'll have 3 lawyers up there, and they'll say, okay, this is the law, what's it mean? And one will get up and say it means this, and the next one will get up and say, he doesn't know what he's talking about, it means this. And then another one gets up and says, well, they're both crazy, and explains why he thinks it means. And I think the basic thing you get from that is there is some flexibility there, because if they want to overrule our ZBA, the place they go is the courts. And that's where these boys play, okay? So they know that there is some flux in these, there can be a little bit of leniency, and exactly what would happen if neighbors sued because they said you didn't do it for the right reasons. The biggest thing that is the responsibility of the town is to listen to the public when they come in, to only make decisions based upon reasons, not because they think the person's cute or they're related to somebody, and they could base it on reason. And then you're not being arbitrary and capricious, you're being fair and you're being just.
Charlie?
I would like to make a couple comments. As was previously stated, we may not by law, whether Jim would like to or anyone else, make a regulation or a law more lenient than the state. We don't have that choice. We have been, over the past few years, through the Zoning Update Committee, been making alterations to the zoning that is bringing it closer in line to what people want to happen. If the zoning is right to begin with, then the variance isn't required. And that's where the board has to invest its time in trying to come up with a reasonable, practical zoning law that people can live with and people can benefit by, not something that's restraining them or restricting them, but enabling them. And I think the board is working in that direction. The zoning has been clarified, it's been updated. There is on file a working document that anyone can get and can use. I think that part's good. I think you're moving in the right direction, but there's no sense arguing over whether or not we like the state regulation because we have no choice.
I disagree with that, Charlie, because I think that our zoning language is, I can say, well, Charlie, I'm just saying that in our regulations, it certainly says that it can be restricted according to financial gain. I tend to believe that ours would hold up in court just as well as this. It's up to an attorney to determine. Well, Charlie, I'm not an attorney either, so neither are you. So I believe in a court, a decision would be made. I don't want to.
Well, the bottom line in this whole wording here, and it repeats it several times, is to protect the character of the neighborhood, health, safety, and welfare of the community. That's the bottom line.
Right,
It's designed for that
absolutely.
purpose only, not to inhibit anyone from doing something they want to do. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the one that handles that part of it. So this document is there to protect the community as a whole. And I feel that it's something that we need to pass and have in our zoning to be consistent with law and also protect the community as a whole. And then from there, we make the decisions based on the situation and do it appropriately. So, any other discussion from the board on this? Any other comments that haven't been made by anyone in the public that might want to say something else here? Okay?
The only other thing is, comments have been made that, like, we aren't working on the zoning. Just because we aren't bringing out a new amendment every month doesn't mean we're not working on it. The way that Jesse ran the meetings when he chaired them and the way that Bill is running them when he's doing the meetings now is until all 5 of us can at least tolerate it, maybe not love it, but tolerate it, we don't bother to show it to you. Because if we can't even agree among ourselves, how in the world are you ever going to like it? So it takes a while. Sometimes you might argue about something for 6 months before you find the right wording or the right combination of requirements that everybody says, well, it's not great, but I guess it's better than what we've got now. So it does take a while to improve it, not just change it.
Jim seconded it for discussion, Bill. Okay. Barb, will you poll the council, please?
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
No.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Resolution 95-97, an ordinance amending sections of the subdivision regulations of the Town of Volney. Be it ordained and enacted by the Town Board of the Town of Volney, County of Oswego, State of New York as follows. A, all sections that state 45 days to the closing of the public hearing to be updated to 62 days after the close of the public hearing. This coincides with Town Law enacted July 1st, 1993, Town Law 276-5C. B, this ordinance shall take effect 10 days after the publication and posting of a notice setting forth the title and brief description thereof, or immediately as provided by Section 133 of the Town Law. I'll move that one.
I'll second.
Any discussions or comments from the board?
The only thing is, which we're gonna go? We're gonna go with the 10 days after publication, or you're gonna go with?
No.
That's the next one.
That's the next one. This is for the subdivision regulations.
Right there. It says 10 days or immediately following section 133.
Oh, that's in the paper.
That's when it takes
That's when
effect.
it takes effect.
When it makes official,
Yeah.
when that resolution is.
That's what I'm asking you. Are you gonna go with the 10 days after you vote on it, or you're
We're
gonna
gonna
go?
have to, because it's not in effect until
Right.
10 days.
Next time we do this, it'll be 5.
Provided by section 133, you can take it in effect immediately. Which one are you gonna go with? That's what I'm asking.
We got it written up with 10 days. We'll take the 10 days.
Okay.
That's where it's written up.
Okay, satisfied? Any questions or comments from the public?
Yeah, it does say we're immediately.
I'm not familiar with Section 133, so I don't know what that means exactly. Do you, Bill? Is this just something you got a model from someone for writing this?
It is for the lawyer.
Come from the lawyer, okay. Our lawyer must know what it means, I guess. Okay.
Wonderful.
No public comment on this one. Barbie, poll the council.
Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
All right.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Resolution 95-98, an ordinance amending sections of the subdivision regulations of the Town of Volney. Be it ordained and enacted by the Town Board of the Town of Volney, County of Oswego, State of New York as follows. A, all sections of Town of Volney subdivision regulations, remove all remaining fees and put in Town of Volney fee schedule. B, this ordinance shall take effect 10 days after publication and posting of a notice setting forth the title and brief description thereof, or immediately as provided by Section 133 of the Town Law. I'll move it.
Second.
Any questions or comments from the board on this? Questions or comments from the public? Barbie, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Resolution 95-99, an ordinance amending sections of the town zoning ordinance of the town of Volney. Be it ordained and enacted by the town board of the town of Volney, county of Oswego, state of New York as follows. A, all sections of town of Volney zoning ordinance. Remove all remaining fees and put in town of Volney fee schedule. B, this ordinance shall take effect 10 days after publication and posting of a notice setting forth the title and brief description thereof, or immediately as provided by section 133 of the town law. I'll move it. Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the public? Barbie, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Mr. Ridgway?
Aye.
Mr. Smart?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Resolution 95-100, an ordinance amending sections of the zoning ordinance of the town of Volney. Be it ordained and enacted by the town board of the town of Volney, county of Oswego, state of New York as follows. A, that states, what's that?
Yes, please.
That states not less than 10 days prior to the date of the public hearing to be changed to 5 days prior to the public hearing. This coincides with town law enacted July 1st, 1993, Town Law 274-7. B, this ordinance shall take effect 10 days after publication and posting of a notice setting forth the title and brief description thereof, or immediately as provided by section 133 of the town law. I'll move it. Discussion or comments from the board?
Yeah, I'm still ambivalent on this one. My concern is Kevin's gone? Because I thought
Yes.
the planning board wanted 10 days and the zoning board wanted the 5. Is that still true, or?
I don't know, we want 5.
I know you want 5, but I heard from Kevin that they wanted 10.
I don't know what the reason was. I think they were worried that we need enough time, but I don't think they understand when somebody comes before a board, they would like to maybe do something with them in 2 weeks, and we can't get it in the paper, so we can't do it in 2 weeks. It usually ends up being the following month, because the paper only comes out twice a week. There's not enough time.
Well, you made an interesting comment last time we were talking about this, is that we could use the pale times for these things, and I'd almost, because that's a daily.
You're gonna get the comment, I don't get the Pale Times, the Daily News, the official newspaper. That's gonna
It's the
come
most
out.
widely circulated in
Most
town.
widely circulated.
Okay, and the other thing that some people are missing is this is the minimum number of days. It is not the maximum. You don't have to get it in the paper, so there's only 5 days' notice. If it's something that there wouldn't appear to be much concern beyond a very small neighborhood, and you've got to kind of cut it short a little bit, fine. If you think it is something that a lot of people would have an opinion, pro or con, you could put it in there 3 weeks before if you wanted to. This is a
what the
minimum,
guy
it's
wants
not a
to do.
maximum.
This is the guy that's got a garage, wants to put a garage up, he's got the builders coming, and he doesn't have much time, but he needs an area variance. And his neighbors have already approved it, but he's got to go through the hoops of a public hearing. And we've ran into that.
You know, I mean, some of these things are, like somebody became handicapped, they can't climb stairs anymore, they need a bathroom, but their house had to move over 2 feet too close to the line for it. Well, most people wouldn't be against their neighbor being able to have a bathroom.
But-
So, you know, that, if it's something of that magnitude and you cut the days short, it isn't a big problem. If it's something like a major subdivision that there probably are a lot of opinions, I can see why the planning board would want to put it in there in plenty of notice so nobody could complain one way or the other. But this will not stop them from doing that.
They can extend the
And,
time.
Yeah.
I don't know what the question is from the planning board, because if they read the subdivision regulations, in our town subdivision regulations, it already has 5 days prior notice in the paper. That's why we didn't put this in this public hearing and amendment today, because it's already been in the subdivision regulations.
So they've got it, but they won't want the ZBA to have it.
So that expedites it really for the guys got.
And if you read the paper at all, you're going to catch it. In 5 days is plenty of time to get here. In 10 days isn't going to make a big difference. If you missed it, you missed it. If you caught it, you caught it. Follow that?
Yeah, got you.
Okay.
I got it. I caught it.
Any questions or comments from the public on this resolution?
The only thing I got to say is what I said before. I mean, just because you put it in the paper, and like she just said it, you can put it in the Pale Times. Okay, they gotta get either one or the other. Okay? But, still, I think 10 days is sufficient. You don't have to reduce it down to 5. It gives you ample time to make plans that you're going to be there. There's going to be a public hearing 10 days from today. You can make plans on 10 days, but 5 days, you know, it's almost, I can't say it's impossible, but, you know, I'm requesting that we stay with the 10 days. And that'll give everybody a break. I mean, you know, I'm sorry, Marie, but that's the way I feel.
It depends on what side of the fence you're on, if you're trying to get something done or if you're just trying to... Well, the wheels turn slow enough in government, so this is one way to maybe speed things along.
Like the sign says, have you read the sign on the street coming in? That's the way I feel too. Read it.
Any other comments?
I didn't read today's. He has several. Which ones he got up today?
Do I get? I don't
No,
know.
no.
Barbie, poll the council.
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway,
Aye.
Counselor Smart,
Aye.
Counselor Warner,
Aye.
Supervisor Rose.
Aye. Next resolution, 95-101, authorization to file for grant. Resolved that Claudia Smart, as councilwoman of the town of Volney, is authorized and directed to file an application on forms prescribed by the Rural New York State Grant Program for financial assistance in accordance with the provisions of the Open Space Institute's Environmental Action Grant for a grant not to exceed $5,000 for this municipality for the Canal Front Park. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Any discussion from the board?
Yeah, just to explain to everyone exactly what it is there, through the grants program, rural grant program in New York State, there are 4 different areas that you can apply for grants of up to $5,000. One is historic preservation, another one's land trust, another one's planning grants, and the other is environmental action grants. Now, what we're actually applying for is to get a plan for the way to develop a nature park down there, but by what the actual things that they like to give grants for, it fits the environmental action grant better, because they want to advocate and plan for the protection of open space resources such as wilderness, trails and greenways, public parks and gardens, scenic landscapes, farmland and forest land. And what I had in mind is working with Brian Madigan in county planning, who we have been working with, and he is a landscape architect. And I have also spoken with Benji Manton from Central Regional Planning in the Department of State, and he is very supportive of this and would like to help us working along with Brian on this. And it was his suggestion that we talk to county planning and see if they would like to be the official consultant on this, because if you're working with somebody like the county and maybe if you worked it out to billable hours, they become a little short, they're going to go ahead and finish the project. If you're working with an architectural firm and you get close to the end of billable hours and you're not done, they're going to say, okay, where's some more? So it would be financially cheaper for the town. The grant deadline on this for filing is September 15th. So I will be working on this over the next month and get it filed. And from talking to Susan Barbarisi from the Open Space Institute, she said the types of things that we want to do down there are the types of things they like to give the grants for. Of course, any of these things, it always depends on exactly how many other people apply at the same time. But this is something that they have these grants available every 6 months. So if there happen to be too many things that somebody likes better, you can apply 6 months later.
What's our commitment if we get it, Claudia?
Nothing.
In other words, this is a planning grant. There'd be no expenditure of any town funds involved with this.
Right.
It's a study.
It's a study.
It's a study. Study I can go on.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Mr. Storing. Could you state your name for the record? Thank you.
I looked curious, I see all the monitors along the parkway, or the canalway that have been dug up. Is that something the state is doing?
Yeah, that's the state, that's not a,
It's all the way up through the, all exposed now.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Barbara, poll the council, please.
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Okay, I have one more resolution, but I want to preface that with a comment tonight. Many of you may know we lost a very well-known and well-liked active member of our community this past week, and I'm referring to Mr. Bud Hawksley, who passed away. And I just want to, on behalf of the town board, express our deepest sympathy to his family. At the same time, I want to mention Mr. Hawksley, who was an active member in our volunteer fire department, was also a member of our solid waste management board of the county, which he represented the town of Volney for. And with his passing, we need to nominate someone to fill the vacancy on that board. Tonight I'm going to ask the town board to, I'd like to nominate two people, which is what the requirement is. The county makes the ultimate decision on who the member of that board is. But I can't think of anyone that I think would be more qualified to serve on this board that's followed the solid waste management in this county for the last 8 years than my wife, Christine. And you know, this is obviously, again, a county decision. And also another person who's been quite active recently and showed some very deep concerns for our environment and our concern with the landfill, incinerator, and so on in our town, and that's Colleen Scott. So those two people I would like to ask this board that we nominate and send to the county for approval for one of them to be put on the solid waste management board.
Howard, you have
Second that.
just, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
No, has it been seconded?
Bill just seconded for discussion.
You nominated two people that are very, very opinionated in the operation. I mean, there is a particular point of view that is, that Chris has certainly, and I believe that Colleen does. And are these people going to get on the board and evaluate objectively the issues that come before that solid waste management board, or are they going to be on there strictly to carry on the battle that's been waged against the IRF and the recovery facility and so forth? I always thought that the person that was on there was a neutral person within the community. When Bud Hawksley was appointed, he was a neutral, I believe. I believe that Sandy Green is on that board, if I'm correct. Sandy, I believe, has a broader perspective, or at least from my point of view, than those that you've nominated. And I believe that there's a very limited point of view that Chris has. I'll be honest.
You're saying you want someone with no opinion then?
No, I want someone who has the ability to evaluate a situation and is not in a situation where they have I'm not going to say axe to grind, but that might be the term that I might want to use.
Well, I don't think that's an appropriate evaluation of it. I think,
I see it is.
particularly my wife is very objective on this. She studied it more in depth than anyone on this board, anyone in this town, I believe. And her interests are this town's, not her own personal interest, Jim. And I think she's probably the best candidate we could even offer the county at this time. I mean, it's up to the county, but...
You may call me opinionated, but let me just say I go to the solid waste board meetings as I see you have, and I would say, without insulting the people that are on the boards, they may be opinionated. On the other hand, I think they need someone who brings up questions and makes them maybe think a little. Art Ospelt is very opinionated, of course, as a county worker. He works there. Mark Lichtenstein, there's a number of people. At the last meeting, I brought up a question, actually not at the last meeting, I wrote the legislature and Mark Lichtenstein a letter because other communities are recycling paperboard, cardboard, I don't mean boxboard, I'm talking about cereal boxes, tissue boxes. Communities are getting paid $190 a ton We are throwing ours away at $50 a ton. Mark took my suggestion and brought it to the board, and they are now going to be recycling paperboard. I think I can be, though I don't think the county will choose me, I think that I could be a help, and I don't think, yes, I live near the incinerator, and yes, I'm not happy it's the only one in New York State without pollution controls, but I think that I have a lot to offer. And as far as the other people that are on the board, no one has ever come here and reported what goes on at those meetings, and I'm here every month, and I would do that.
Okay, and Sandy Green, I think she is not being portrayed accurately here. She is not somebody that has no opinions.
I don't believe I said
She is
that.
somebody who is a very reasonable person, and when there haven't been very many solid waste management meetings, there are supposed to be 6 a year, and there are not. The information that was brought up when they finally had one, after a long break of not having any, they brought up the Transco transfer station, and Sandy immediately contacted me the next day to make sure our board knew about what was happening, because she was very concerned, because even though that was a project that would actually be situated in the town of New Haven, that tractor trailers carrying this waste would be using Route 6, on which she lives, along with a lot of other residents in the town of Volney, and she was concerned about whether or not this was good for our town to have that there, and so she wanted to make sure that the information got to everyone as soon as possible, and she also contacted the newspapers. So I think that what is bad is having a person who is just totally out of control, and they would just go and every meeting tell everybody they're everything but nice. To have somebody that wants to have questions answered, who wants to ask questions, find out if there's a more efficient way to run this, a better way environmentally to run it, I don't see how that is necessarily a bad thing. In fact, when I checked with Mark Lichtenstein on the Transco transfer station that Sandy was so concerned about, Mark was extremely helpful and sent me a nice packet on it, so our town would be able to get very quickly up to date on what was going on.
You just reinforced what I said.
No, she has opinions.
I did not even imply that she did not have an opinion, Claudia. What I said was is that she does not have...
Okay, well, it's your prerogative if you don't like my choice and my proposal here to vote it down, Jim. There's only one.
You have to
You have to nominate 2 of the county picks of those 2.
Did you advertise for it to see if anybody wanted to apply?
No. It's not required. As a matter of fact, the last appointments that were made weren't even brought before the board that I remember. They were just made. I'm not even sure who made them.
When it was put on the board, there was an advertisement, and because him and Mr. St. Ange, I think, did apply when the board was first established. There was a notice in the paper asking for people to apply.
I thought that Sandy Green, I thought that there was a group that applied.
Sandy Green, I didn't even remember her being appointed, but I do know when the board was originally established, that was one of the criteria that they would advertise for the position.
It's not written that way, but maybe you did it then because no one had anyone in mind to appoint.
Sure, Skeeter came on, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking that.
Alan?
Alan Kestner, County Route 45. Jim, I can't wait to see this on tape. In the middle there, you were saying we don't need somebody who can something the earth. What I was saying was that there appears to me to be a concerted effort by certain people in the town of Volney to be completely critical always of the energy recovery facility of the earth. And there is, I believe that I'm trying. I believe that my comment was, in my opinion, there is a vendetta in some ways, and I use the term, that is being waged against the county energy recovery facility. And I believe that that has been going on for years, and I believe that the person that's on that board should be able to objectively look at all things.
And that's my concern with the nominees.
The phrase in the middle there, Earth was the end of it. You'll have to watch the tape.
Well, again, objectively, I think my wife would be very objective, Jim, and she has been, as I have been. You know, you may have a different opinion than I do. That doesn't mean you're objective and I'm not, though.
But I totally disagree with you on that. So.
It's your privilege. Fern?
I think that it's time, I'm not going to comment on whether my daughter Colleen should be on there or not, but as far as Chris is concerned, I think it's time we've had someone with some opinions about how we want to keep the air and the earth and everything in the town of Volney. If we do not state definite opinions, as Chris would be able to do were she appointed to this position, there's so many that are only concerned with their county positions and what it'll get them. Just like when they built the recovery center, they weren't concerned that a law had already been passed, that it was not up to what it should be. But because they had a little bit on paper before that law went through, they were allowed to build that below what the law demanded at that point. So we've got to have somebody there that'll look out for us in the town of Volney, and I think you have selected two good people to.
Thank you. Larry?
Larry Raleigh, Muller Road. I'd like to go on record as agreeing with Marie for once in my life.
What's that?
Well, Marie mentioned that in the past she thought you went out and advertised for it, and if I'm not mistaken, Colleen is Claudia's sister, and obviously Christine is your wife, and both may be very well qualified for the job. But rather than staying entirely in-house, it would be nice to see if anybody else had an interest in it before you make your choices.
Well, I've been involved in this issue for 8 years, Larry, and no one's come forward yet. And I think advertising, it's only going to bring someone in that may want to be on it, but
Howard,
doesn't...
You're always been very big on advertising and bringing people into things. And like I said, it just seemed odd that you're so open with...
I don't think it seems odd at all. I think the choice is obvious to me. You know, and it's not because she's my wife. It's because I think she's the most qualified, okay?
I didn't question that at all. I just said it seems odd that you...
And it's not required to advertise for the position.
When's the county got to have these names, Howard?
I don't think there's any deadline, but before their next meeting, I'm sure they would like to have them so they could make an appointment. I'm
We're not having meetings, what's the rush? Maybe you ought to consider advertising and see if there is other people that may be more qualified. I'm sure Chris is very qualified, I have no doubt. But
No, yeah, the legislative body is the one that does the appointing, right. These are recommendations to the legislative body.
But if you don't have any other recommendations, and they don't appoint Chris or Colleen, what will happen? We won't have any representation?
Right, they have to. They have to appoint one of the two that we submit.
I don't know that that's true.
That is true, Jim. According to the agreement that we have, that's what it says. We submit 2 names for each seat, and they choose from the 2 names. Well, otherwise, why would we even bother to begin with to recommend from here? Because if they could just have their pick, then they could just pick from the town. It's this board that has to recommend. Okay? Well, it's the board's pleasure, Marie, if that's what they decide they want to do.
No, I know that, Carl. I'm just saying that maybe it would look fair if you did advertise the position.
Yes, Christine?
It's a non-paid position.
Yeah. There's nothing in it for anyone.
No,
you know?
I go to the meetings anyway. In fact, I went to a meeting that they canceled and didn't even tell us they canceled, so I go to meetings even when they don't have them. But, you know, that's up to whatever. I would like to be on that board. I'm not sure the county would take me anyway, but whatever the board decides to do is fine with me.
If there was a number of people involved, we knew they were involved and were concerned and came to meetings about it all the time, I would say, yeah, maybe we should consult with those people, see if they're interested as well. That hasn't happened. There hasn't been anyone over the years, you know. So.
A lot of people have been involved environmentally over the years. Maybe they haven't gone to solid waste meetings, but there has been a lot of people have been involved.
I'm talking about being involved in the issue, coming to meetings here. There's been numerous meetings at this town hall. There has not been the interest, Marie. I don't see any reason to go any further. That's just my opinion. If the board feels differently, then that'll be the board's decision. Okay? Any other comments or questions? Barbie, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
No.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. New business. Does anyone on the board have any new business?
Yes, due to the article that was in the paper on Sunday about the town of DeWitt having an annexation problem with the city of Syracuse, in the spirit of intermunicipal cooperation, I contacted the town of DeWitt and said the town of Volney was very, very happy to offer them any background information that we have about an annexation. And the supervisor's office was very happy to hear from us, and I've already spoken to them twice. Also, the town of New Haven was also very happy that there were people from the town of Volney that were at their meeting last night, because they're very concerned about this transfer station. And there are people in the town of New Haven that hope that we decide there is some sort of supporting resolution that we can make in support of the town of New Haven in trying to block this from coming into their town.
On that subject, I'd just like to make one other comment that was in the paper, if anyone didn't notice it. One of the comments made by, I think it was a citizen in the town of New Haven, or maybe it was the developer himself, stated that when we tried to get the county to come here to address an incinerator in our town that they own and operate, they knew nothing about it, referred everything to the DEC. A transfer station goes into the town of New Haven, is proposed, and they know everything about transfer stations, and they're ready to be the lead agency in it. Just had to throw that in, just for contrast. Public, or petitions. Anyone have any petitions tonight? No petitions? Okay, I'm going to open the floor to public comment. Yes, Mr. Clavelli.
Okay, I'm Dominic Clavelli. I live on the Kingdom Road, town of Volney. I have to address this to you, Howard. I'm not trying to be smart, but this is what I got. Several meetings ago, we had a meeting at which time you asked for public input on the purchase of the property out of Great Bear Farm, the so-called 100 acres or 90 acres, whatever you had. Before this meeting was over, I asked that a disclosure statement be added to the purchase agreement for the reasons, as I stated, like contaminants in the ground and so on and so forth. I also stated that DEC can come in on this property anytime they want and ask that the possibility of contaminants are there, and without this statement, the town is liable for any cleanup. You, at that time, addressed the board to have this disclosure statement put in the purchase agreement. And everyone here agreed to it. It was either the Friday after the meeting or a week later. Are you following me so far? Okay. You called a special board meeting. And at that meeting, this disclosure statement that you people voted on was automatically taken out. Now, what bothers me is you say one thing in front of these people here, then all of a sudden you turn right around and you do what you want to do behind closed doors.
I did what our attorney advised us to do, Mr. Clavelli. And I didn't do it behind closed doors. It was a public meeting, so I don't know where
Well, when you took the disclosure statement out?
Yes, it was an open meeting. The doors were open. It was noticed in the press and was notified. It was all up and up.
Well, I didn't see it, okay? I don't know. Maybe I'm not looking close enough for it. Also, you transferred some money tonight. from one account, from the contingency account to the parks, whatever. It was stated at that meeting by Claudia that if we purchased this, or we made a purchase price on it or whatever, that a grant of approximately, I don't know, 100,000 or whatever, would be forthcoming.
Possibly forthcoming. No guarantees were made.
She said it was almost guaranteed.
She said it looked very good, is what she said, and it still looks very
Well,
good.
it looks very good. It looks almost guaranteed. And she got it from the state officials.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why are we transferring money from one account to the other to pay for the park?
Mr. Valley, the grants haven't been awarded yet. Until such time as they're awarded, we will be reimbursed if we get that grant. In the meantime, we're obligated to pay for it.
Well, I think something's going either left field or right field, but it's not coming back here. It's not coming back to us.
It certainly is. There's nothing, you just told us everything you know about it, and that's all there is.
Yeah. And now, you know, who paid for the money for the survey of the property?
The town
Where
did.
did this money come from?
It came out of our
We're
legal
crying
services
poverty
fund.
too. We're crying poverty. I mean, we can't spend for this and we can't spend for that, but yet you can turn right around and we haven't got any money, and you turn and pay what? Approximately $2,000 to
For the
survey
survey?
this property? I don't know.
It's part of doing that, Mr. Cavelli. You just don't buy property.
Where
without
did
having
the
a
where
survey.
did the original property owner come in on this thing? He just grabs $100,000 and runs.
That's the deal that was made with the property owner. They construct their own deal however they see fit, and we have to either agree or disagree with it.
Okay, when DEC comes in there, who's going to be liable for the contaminants that are in the ground? We know
There's no contaminants in the ground that anyone is aware of, Mr. Cavelli. You told us there was all these things. This whole board took a walk over there. We saw nothing of the sort that you were talking about. So your concerns were unfounded.
You're not going to see it. You're not going to see it. You know that, Howard.
Mr. Cavelli, there's probably contaminants in your backyard that you may
That's
not
right,
know.
I know there
I
is.
don't know. There may be in my backyard.
I know there's contaminants in my backyard.
Well, what are we
But
supposed
if
to do?
DEC comes in there, I've got to pay for it.
Well, we're confident that DEC is not going to come in there and find anything, or wouldn't have made the move, okay?
Well, what I'm saying is, DEC can come in. Where are we going to get this money to clean it up? And it doesn't take $1.50 to clean it.
You're assuming that's the case. We're not.
I know it is the case.
Well,
And I
hope you're wrong.
I don't want to argue about it. I just want you to know, and I want the people of the town of Volney, and you're talking about Chris, you know, Chris is a good girl, okay? Chris treats me well. But I don't want to be taken for a ride. I don't want the people in the town of Volney to be taken for a ride.
And neither do we.
So therefore, I still think, and I will say, that this disclosure statement should be adopted and put right back in there. I don't care. We may own the property now, but that property owner, the original property owner, should be liable for something. Not the people of the town of Volney, because I know DEC can come in there and say, okay, punch a hole here, we're going to test, and we're going to, you know, test for it. DEC can do that anytime they want to. That property may not be on their files, in their archives, but they can come in because it's going to be for public use. Therefore, where are we going to get the money?
Well, Mr. Riley, it's your opinion there's a problem there. It's our opinion that there isn't. Until such time as it's proven, I don't know what else we can say.
Well, I don't want to wait until DEC comes in there. I would like to see that disclosure statement back in there and have that property owner at least be liable for half of it, or if not most of it.
You're sounding like this is an old factory site or something. This is an old farm that Mr. Nessel never farmed. It just sat as vacant land for 42 years. And I can understand Mr. Nessel not being a retired person who is not a multimillionaire, not wanting to be personally liable in case something maybe happened 150 years before he was born. There is nothing that anybody knows of that could be a problem down there. And if there is, it certainly wasn't anything that was caused by Mr. Nessel, because he just had the land as vacant for people. He let people go down on the trails and went down and enjoyed the land.
That's been a landfill for prior to Great Bear coming in too.
We're not aware of that. They never admitted that to us.
It was stated right here on the board.
By the town of Scruple? No, I don't remember that.
Right here on the board.
I don't remember that. Larry?
Just out of curiosity, did they do a phase one environmental audit?
Did we do a phase one what?
Environmental audit on property.
I don't believe it was required, Larry.
And your attorney told you that you did not need a disclosure statement?
He told us that they wouldn't put one in, like most people won't. And I'm sure you've encountered that in some properties that you probably purchased where they won't put them in.
I can't buy anything anymore unless it has that in. And further, if you had to go to any bank for any financing, you'd have to have at least a phase one environmental audit.
Well, it was a bank that financed this.
Well, you're lucky, or you're in town, but you are fully responsible if there is anything there. And all the audit does and all the
We
disclosure does is it spreads, if there is a problem, it spreads it back on to past owners. And that also was Great Bear, and there also were pesticides up there. So, I don't know, but...
City's water supplies there
I
too.
was kind of hoping you'd say you did a phase one, because that would somewhat take the place of that. But
If it had been required, we would have.
it should have been your requirement.
Our attorney didn't advise us to do that. We talked about that. That was not anything he advised us to do.
Get that in writing from your attorney, because if something ever happens, you may have a way to go then.
Okay, we'll talk to him about it.
It's big bucks if something happens.
Okay. Alan?
This land here, before we vote on it, we looked at the study that City of Fulton did when they bought the Great Bear Farm. This land, where Nestle's land is located, the water flows from his property to the city wells. I'm sure that when, from that study what the City of Fulton did when they bought the Great Bear Farm in spring, that they had this all checked out to begin with. And if there had been contaminants in there, by now, the ground level water would have flowed that way anyways, with the amount of water that's being taken out of that system.
You're missing my whole point. My whole point is that without a phase one, which is not very expensive, or without the disclosure, you just assumed all liability if there isn't. Good, bad, or indifferent, you just assumed it if there isn't. That's all I meant. It's a scary, we've got involved in some of these gas stations, and I know it's a different issue, but it's scary when they get into it.
Alan?
Alan Kestner, County Route 45. Just a comment on when you brought up that resolution. Are you calling that Canal Front Park now? Is that an official name?
It was suggested by both county planning and Bill Horvath of the state that it's easier to get grants right now from the Canal Corporation and some other people in that area if it's easy for them to tell it's canal property as they're shifting through looking at the different one. So it doesn't mean you can't change the name later, but for grant purposes, it's...
Well, Jim, are you listening, taking notes here? It's Canal Front should be one word, shouldn't it? It's like riverfront property, right?
I would send it to you.
Thank you.
But if they want to do it...
You gave your answer.
Show me an English teacher doesn't give you 2 or 3, and I'll show you.
Any other public comment? Charlie?
Well, this, we're talking about the grant, which would be, we would get it and do it if it was to provide the funds to us. It would not cost the town. Although I personally seriously doubt there's any kind of pollution of any type like that. In fact, the town park up here, the fire department burned automobiles there. The DEC came in. They tested it. They found no problems. There are contaminants there that the DEC is going to be concerned about. It's going to pose a public problem. If there's no problem, and the DEC did come in to check where the fire department was burning automobiles for training. I just, once again, in light of the recent developments in the Supreme Court, where Senator Barkley, former Senator Barkley, was upheld in his right to stop people from dropping anchor and fishing in what everyone had assumed was a public waterway, it just points out the extreme importance that the town do something that guarantees the public forever the right to the access to the river and the ability to enjoy the river. Because obviously, if this can hold up, then private owners can buy up all of the land and deny access to the public.
Thank you, Charlie. Anyone else? Fern?
Yeah, one thing. I had a phone call inquiring about something, and I did forget to put it in the report. There was a Hugh and Joanna Matthews back in the late 1800s, and it's supposed to have been that they lived on a farm in Volney near Fulton, and that they raised white turkeys. And there's a lady from California who is trying to find out more about them. So if anyone has ever heard of a farm in Volney near Fulton where there were white turkeys raised. Now, I know the Plainville farm, but that is far from being in the town of Volney. So if anybody has any kind of a scrap of information that would help us find this area, I would appreciate it.
Okay, good. Larry?
Larry Raleigh, Volney. I wondered if I could offer a view on the annexation thing that seems to have been ignored, or at least not looked at. If I might indulge you for a second. A lot of you are probably aware that Miller's is coming in for reduction after reduction with their taxes with the closing. Niagara is doing the same thing. And although the town is in pretty good financial shape right now, looking down the road, we've got our hands full. There's been a lot of emotion over the annexation and a lot of things that I think lost focus on it. But something that I think you should kind of look back at is if anybody has driven recently through the town of Oswego, there's water lines and water hydrants running all over the town. They just run it from one end to the other. As this recession or slowdown that we're in clears up, you're going to see that area grow because for growth, no matter how you do it today, you need water and sewer, especially water. If this town is going to grow, if this town is going to keep up, if it's going to make up for the Millers and different things, we need water and sewer. I've said it before, and I'll keep on saying it. I see the board passing on a golden opportunity here because we're all hung up on some emotion and some different things. Once this issue goes to court, we're either going to win or we're going to lose. If we win the right to receive some portion of $15,000 a year approximately in taxes, or whatever that number may be, but it's a minor number. But we will probably end any chance of getting water or sewer from the city for a good long time. And also, if we were to negotiate a deal or to work something, this is the first time the town of Volney has had any leverage or any position where they could deal with. And we're passing it up. We're letting it go out the window. We could have had an interchange that probably serviced part of the north or south end of town. Now it services just the mall. In the earlier dealings, they offered us water and sewer were contingent to the city or were available, and they offered us $100,000 a year or something in preliminary negotiations. So the two of you were there with me. None of this ever got to contract. None of this ever got to completion. You can always say, well, they wouldn't have kept their word. They wouldn't have done this. They wouldn't have done that. We don't know. We never got that far. But the point I'm trying to make is, this town needs water and sewer to grow. We could have taken and invested in our future with 26 acres or 32 acres, whatever it is, and made one heck of a deal for this town. Everybody's hung up on over losing a little bit of land. Whitewaters, whoever, the property owner, me at the time, whatever, has the legal right of annexation. Whether you like that or not, that's a right that a property owner has that's adjacent to a municipality. You're obviously entitled to your opinion.
Legal right to apply, Larry, not legal right to annexation.
Well,
Big difference.
that's all that was done,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But they have their right. And the point is, the town was in a position because of the sales tax issue to reap some of that benefits, to have access to water or sewer, and to invest in our future. Oswego's doing it in a different method. They're investing directly. We're not doing anything. We never have. If this town, when it had designated the industrial area up there, had gone forward and put water and sewer in it, this wouldn't even be an issue, but we didn't. When the county tried to pass a water district, we shot that down. Now, I don't know the right avenue, and I know Claudia said we can provide it ourselves. Then why not take their money and build our water districts? If you can do it, do it. I still don't see any hydrants in the town. I still don't see any sewer stations. We can always do these things, but we don't do them. There was a perfect avenue here to do it. There's still an avenue until you go to court. I probably know as much about this as anybody does. You two got in at an early stage. And I just sat back and I thought, I feel very sad that we're not looking at the whole picture. It's an emotional issue, the annexation, but it's very sad that we're not looking at it like a business. This is a business. You are to run our business for us. You have a responsibility. What you're doing now is spending a lot of money on something that outside of your pride probably won't gain you much. But worst of all, there's a golden opportunity here that you're passing on, that we could just make this town have access to all these things to go. Thank you very much for
I'd like to make a statement if I can add. We try to deal with city of Fulton half and half for sales tax. Everybody ought to benefit from it. But no, they don't want to talk. They want the whole ball of wax, and that's it. As far as water and sewage goes, that could have been handled to the Metropolitan Water Board years ago when they give up the water lines for taxes and all that. As you know, development in town usually goes through, the developers usually put in the water and sewage, same taxpayers. We get back at the mall, I like to stress the fact that if you take Mayor Bullock's statement that the city's lost, say, $200,000 in sales tax, well, that means to me that the average John Doe, the average taxpayer, has also had $200,000 in buying power that he wouldn't have had if they had to give that sales tax that goes to the city thing. People from Volney, Granby, Palomino, and like that. Sometimes if you're a family of 5 and you got one of these jobs that pay $5 an hour, you know, a 3% sales tax means a lot to them people. It might not be to you. 3% might be nothing. I don't know. But you can carry this a long ways. You can take land that's being our assessments are way out of whack in some things. Some things land is asked to be assessed for $50 a lot, but the people are asking $20,000 for a lot. Now, if the developer is saying this lot's worth $20,000, gee, why don't you assess it for $20,000 instead of having a developer come in and say, gee, the land don't mean nothing to the town board that I ought to be assessed $50. But then turn around and charge somebody $20,000 by saying it's worth that. It causes a lot of problems being on planning and everything. The developers will try to get away with a lot of stuff. In one community, they put water in, they put cement sewers in. The developer does. Even before one house is built, it's required. This is in Seneca Falls. This community with a developer here, the waivers and everything, puts in roads like this and drainage like this. This don't increase the value of our residential things. And these lots are expensive. They're called developed lots. But there's a lot of difference between lots like this and lots like that in bringing in value to your property. And it's hard. We need assessors in this town. It used to be 20 years ago, they used to go to Albany and fight for the equalization rate. I believe in 1974, equalizing rate was 22%. Now it's down to about 8%. And I know the last 7 years that not one of our assessors have gone to Albany to argue for our equalization rate in this town. As we lose business, as our values go down, our equalization rate ought to be going up. But we don't have the system here to carry through. There was other ways, you know.
The point I was trying to make, though, is your conversation, your argument has been going on in this town for 20 years. Let the developer do it, let somebody else do it. I'm saying, why doesn't the town invest in a town like some of the other towns? We aren't Seneca Falls. There are people knocking on the doors to get here. In Cindy's report, if I'm not mistaken, I think she's gone, she didn't mention one new home in this town.
Yes, she did.
Yes, she did.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I stand corrected. One new home for the summer season. Congratulations.
Congratulations, the town of Clay, Larry, they shouldn't get in a debate on it, but town of Clay installed a town-wide water district. You know where a lot of them residents are going now? They're going to Hastings, Central Square, and like that. These are people that voted out the water district because they can't live the bond that it costs to put that water in the town of Clay.
That's why I suggested using the city's money to build the water.
The problem with that, and if I had known the problems 3 years ago when we got involved with this, it would have made it so that any recommendations that our board made would have been totally different. The city of Fulton cannot provide the water and sewer. Their system is a mess. The sewer system has constant overflows into the Oswego River of raw sewage. Their water system, if you just read the Valley News last week, Environmental Focus, that was written by the wife of an alderman, from April until July, when the flushing is, people complain about dirty water in the city. Their water has a problem. Water quality matters too. Their system is old and antiquated. There are some people that have told me they're afraid that there is contamination of the water supply from the sewer system because both of the pipes are very old and run near each other, and they're really afraid that some of the sewage is ending up in the water system, and a lot of the people are afraid to drink anything but bottled water. And there is not a real good future for extending that old grandfather system out here. What we might better have done, and the way you do it, is not try to see who you can beg something for, but for as big projects come in, it's just you set up an efficient town-wide system as the town wants it. You don't put in a system when people don't want it. You put it in areas where there is a demand for it, when there is a project big enough. A perfect example of this is in Seneca Hill. We have the medical complex coming in there. They need water and sewer. So we are negotiating with them so that the water and sewer comes in there in a way that it fixes the water pressure problems and hydrant problems in Seneca Hill. Given a choice, not being foolish, they would not voluntarily say, gee, let us see how much money we can spend in the town while we're building a facility. But if the town realizes that that is their prerogative to be watching for the rights and needs and concerns of the residents at the same time a major taxpayer is coming into the area, then you make sure that while this major taxpayer is coming in, that something happens in a positive way to benefit the infrastructure for the residents surrounding it. And that's what we're doing.
Go ahead, Larry.
The only comment I'm trying to make about it is, you made a lot of wonderful statements, and they all sound very nice, but nothing happens. There is no place for somebody that wants, not all developments can afford a water and sewer system. I grant you that the city is struggling on their sewer, and I don't see the problem with water. But even if we use our own, let's do it. Let's do something. We have, it's always we can, we will, we shall, but we don't. And that's my whole point. You don't. We've had this conversation before. You haven't done anything. There's nothing happening.
The point is even missing, and when I've gone to, because I do not have the requirement as the zoning and planning board people do to get continuing education in planning and zoning, but unless I have a conflict, I go to every training session they have available. And the biggest thing that they tell you when you're planning this is that, sure, the little guy can't afford to put in the water and sewer system. That is why you plan around the big developments and allow the little guys to cluster around them. And that is the way the little guys get their water and sewer, is by building around where the bigger guys came in.
You don't have any big guys. I'm saying wrong little guys.
And that's why we're trying to protect our tax base, so we'll get more of the big guys have an interest in the town, because the tax base is decent. The town of Junius has an extremely good outlet mall, and they had no water or sewer. However, they did have low taxes. And in exchange, because they were very forward-thinking, even though their town did not have any water or sewer at the time, and they hired Brickwoody out of Syracuse to overlook what the town's perspective should be on that development. And what he negotiated for them with the developer is running water through half of the town in exchange for setting up the water district for them. So there are, that has made it so the town of Junus can expand, and it has not come over the tired, overtaxed backs of the regular residents. It's come in when a large taxpayer saw a good opportunity in a good tax base, a good location, and then you use a good opportunity to benefit the residents.
Okay, that's the end of the debate. We're not here to debate. You made your comments, Larry, the board made theirs, I'm going to make mine, and then we're going to go on to something else or someone else's comments. You made the statement that we're not looking at the whole picture. First of all, the whole picture has not been shown to us and still has not been shown to us. A year before we found out that there was even any involvement with the IDA pilot program, you knew about it, but we didn't. Because you knew about it, Larry. I know you know about it, okay? Everyone else knew about it. They said, how come you didn't know about it? Well, we didn't know about it because no one told us. But the paperwork had been done. I know you're aware of it. But this is what we're referring to. You wonder why we don't trust people and trust things. This is what we've been up against. The countywide water district plan fell through because nobody trusted the county in their efforts. It was very vague. No one knew where there was going to be water district. If they had specifically said, we're going to set one up here in Volney, we're going to set one up here, maybe it might have been different. But no one knew what they were going to do with that. It was up to them to do whatever they wanted once we approved it. Okay. I understand the IDA completely. I knew then, too. You're talking about EDZ. If I had a choice to vote IDA down, I'd do that as well.
The point is, you didn't trust it.
And I still don't.
Well, why take us all with you? You could have had a water district here.
We could have had a water district? How do you know that?
That was a vote of the residents of Oswego County. This board did
Right.
not vote on the water district one way or the other.
Okay, enough about debating this issue. Charlie, he's made his hand up longer.
Well, I would like to point out, once again, the same small amount. Armstrong's assessed failure of $4.6 million, Paul's assessed $10.3 million.
Nobody's going to suggest we give away Armstrong, and it's foolish to give away the property. The land is there in perpetuity. Fulton tried to annex Reynolds as well. We're supposed to say, yes, you take this, and then allow you to take the next piece along our tax base. You're not talking about an exchange of sewer and water for something. You're talking about a community that was only interested in aggressive expansion. It was not any kind of reasonable trade, and it would be foolish for us to do that. Volney is ideally situated at this point for expansion. We are situated between Clay and we're situated between Oswego. Just as Walmart sets up their expansion program in a hub and go every 15 miles, we're the 15 miles. 481 is part of the National Highway System. That's where the growth is projected to occur in Oswego County. For us to give away the growth corridor doesn't give the town anything.